I worked hard for my success only to find my family viewing it as an invoice, orchestrating a celebratory dinner to claim my recent significant bonus. The clinking of silverware against expensive porcelain is supposed to be a comforting sound. It's the soundtrack of success, of fine dining, of a life you've built for yourself. But for me, sitting here under the softly glowing chandeliers of Le Étoile, every sound is a warning. The gentle slosh of wine in a glass, the low murmur of other patrons, even the polite, almost invisible way the waiter tops off my water. It all feels like the tightening of a carefully laid trap. I'm Alexander Cruz. I'm 28 years old, and by most measures, I'm doing well. I'm a software engineer. I live on my own in a city that's notoriously expensive, and I'm financially solvent. I worked for this. Every late night debugging code, every weekend spent on a personal project to build my portfolio, every sacrifice I made in my early 20s has led to this moment where I can afford to be in a place like this. The irony is I'm not here to enjoy it. I'm here because I'm the guest of honor at my own execution. Across the table, my family is a perfect picture of celebration. My mother, Isabella, is 53, but carries herself with the energy of someone much younger beaming at me. Her smile is radiant, but I've learned to look closer. I see the slight, calculating glint in her eyes, the one that always appears when money is involved. Beside her, my father, Ricardo, 55, swirls a deep red wine in his glass. He's a man who appreciates the finer things in life, especially when he isn't the one paying for them. He catches my eye and gives me a proud fatherly nod, a gesture that used to fill me with warmth, but now just feels like a performance. And then there's my younger sister, Sophia. At 22, she's still figuring things out, and I get that. But she's also learned from the best. She's laughing at something my father said, her phone on the table next to her, probably already composing a social media post about this amazing family dinner. #blessed, #family first. They think this is a celebration of my success. On the surface, that's what it's about. But I know the truth. This isn't a celebration, it's an invoice. It all started 4 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon and I'd just gotten out of my annual performance review. My boss had been glowing. He talked about my contributions to a major project, my leadership on the junior dev team, and my commitment to the company. Then he slid an envelope across the desk. It was my annual bonus, and it was significant. More than I had expected, enough to make a real difference, pay off the last of my student loans, maybe even make a down payment on a condo. It was the kind of moment that feels like a level up in the game of life. The first person I wanted to tell was my mom. That was my mistake. It's a reflex, right? You get good news, you call your family. I was buzzing with excitement driving home from the office, and I just dialed her number without thinking. Mom, you are not going to believe the day I started the grin audible in my voice. I told her everything. I told her about the review, what my boss said, and the number in the envelope. For a moment, she was just a mom. Her voice was full of genuine pride. Oh, Alex, that's wonderful. We are so proud of you. You've worked so hard for this. You deserve every penny. And I believed her. For a few minutes, I let myself feel that uncomplicated joy. But then the shift happened. It was subtle, just a slight change in her tone. The pride was still there, but something else crept in underneath it. A kind of proprietary interest. Wow, she'd said, her voice a little too thoughtful. That's really a blessing for the whole family. A blessing for the whole family. The words hung in the air long after the call ended. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, too cynical. But I couldn't ignore the pattern. This wasn't the first time my success had been framed as a communal resource. There was the incident 3 years ago, after I got my first big promotion. My dad's car suddenly had a catastrophic transmission issue. It was framed as a family crisis, and my new salary was presented as the family's solution. I ended up paying for half the repairs, a bill that set my own savings back by months. Then about a year and a half ago, Sophia decided she wanted to do a summer study abroad program in Spain. It was an amazing opportunity, but it was expensive. My parents co-signed her loans, but they made it very clear to me in hushed tones and with worried faces that they didn't know how they'd ever manage the payments. The implication was clear. I was the successful son, the software engineer. It was my duty to help. I ended up gifting her the money for her flights and living expenses. Another major hit to my financial goals, written off as me just being a good brother. Twice I had let my desire for their approval and my guilt turn my personal achievements into a solution for their financial shortfalls. As I sat in my apartment after that phone call with my mom, The excitement about my bonus slowly curdled into a cold dread. I knew with absolute certainty that a third time was coming. I didn't have to wait long. A week ago, my phone rang. It was Mom again, her voice bubbling with manufactured excitement. "Alex, honey, I have the most wonderful idea," she began. "Your father and I were talking, and we feel like we haven't properly celebrated your incredible bonus. We need to do something special, just the four of us, to honor you." My stomach dropped. "Oh yeah, what did you have in mind?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I was thinking of that beautiful French place downtown Celebratory. You know, the one with the tasting menu? It's your night, Alex. You deserve to be treated like a king." Celebratory, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, where a single entree costs what I normally spend on a week's worth of groceries. The alarm bells in my head weren't just ringing anymore. They were screaming. "Mom, that place is really expensive," I said carefully. She just laughed, a light, airy sound that was meant to be reassuring. "Oh, don't you worry about a thing. This is a celebration. It's about family. It's about being proud of our son. Just say you'll be there, Saturday at 7. Notice what she didn't say. She never said it's our treat. She never said we're taking you out. She said, "Don't you worry about a thing." A phrase so deliberately vague it was a masterpiece of manipulation. It was designed to make me feel cheap and ungrateful if I pressed the issue. If I asked who's paying, I'd be ruining the spirit of the celebration. I'd be the one making it about money. So I didn't ask. I just said, "Okay, Mom, I'll be there." But as I hung up the phone, I made a promise to myself. Never again. This was the third strike. I wasn't going to be their emergency fund anymore. I wasn't going to let them guilt me into bankrolling their lifestyle under the guise of family. I was going to go to this dinner, play my part, and see exactly how it played out. The appetizers have come and gone. My father, with a grand gesture, ordered 2 bottles of a ridiculously priced wine without even glancing at the menu. "Only the best for my successful son," he'd boomed, raising his glass to me. Sophia had insisted on getting an extra appetizer for the table, the one with the truffle oil and imported cheese, looking at me with wide, hopeful eyes as she suggested it. And my mother has been orchestrating the entire evening, telling stories about my childhood, bragging to the waiter that I'm a brilliant engineer, and generally painting me as the benevolent patriarch of this whole affair. I've been smiling. I've been nodding. I've been playing the role of the humble, successful son they want me to be. But inside, I'm a spectator. I'm watching a play I've seen before, and I know exactly how it's supposed to end. Every time one of them mentions something, they want to buy a new patio set for the backyard, a new laptop for Sophia, their eyes flicker towards me for just a fraction of a second. It's a subconscious tick, a reflex. They've gotten used to seeing me as a resource. The main courses are magnificent, I'm sure. I can barely taste mine. The knot in my stomach is too tight. I'm just moving food around on my plate, sipping my water, and waiting. Waiting for the moment the other shoe drops. The main course plates have just been cleared. The waiter asks if we'd like to see the dessert menu, and my mother gives him a warm smile. "Perhaps in a moment," she says. "I think my husband wants to say a few words first." And there it is, the turning point. The air shifts. My father clears his throat, a theatrical sound that commands the table's attention. He picks up his wine glass, holding it aloft. My mother and sister follow suit, their eyes all turning to me. Their smiles are wide expectant. This is the crescendo, the grand finale of their performance. I feel my heart rate quicken, not with anxiety, but with a cold, hard resolve. The trap is about to spring, but this time I'm not the one who's going to get caught. My father, Ricardo, tapped his fork against his wineglass. The gentle ting cut through the low murmur of the restaurant, a sound designed to gather focus. He was 55, but in moments like this, he carried himself with the pomp of a Roman emperor addressing his Senate. He beamed, his face flushed from the expensive wine, the wine I was now apparently buying. "Ahem," he began, and the whole world seemed to shrink to the 4 corners of our table. "On this wonderful evening, at this beautiful restaurant, Le Cléatoile," he paused, letting the fancy French name hang in the air like expensive perfume. "We are here for a very special reason, to celebrate my son." He gestured to me with his glass, and the wine sloshed precariously close to the rim. Isabella, my mother, placed a hand on her heart, her expression a perfect blend of maternal pride and calculated performance. My sister, Sophia, at 22, was practically vibrating with excitement, her eyes gleaming. They were all in on it. This was a well-rehearsed play, and I was the guest of honor, and more importantly, the unwitting sponsor. "Alexander, My father continued, his voice thick with counterfeit emotion. Your mother and I, your whole family, we are just so incredibly proud of the man you've become. A brilliant software engineer. So successful, so generous. He let the word generous linger for a moment, and I felt a switch flip inside my chest. It wasn't a hot, angry switch. It was cold. It was the sound of a heavy steel door slamming shut and the deadbolt sliding into place. This wasn't a toast, it was an invoice. It was the preamble to the bill, a verbal justification for the financial ambush they had so carefully planned. He raised his glass a little higher. The light from the chandelier caught the deep red of the wine, making it look like a vial of blood. He looked me straight in the eye, his smile never faltering, and then he delivered the final fatal line, the one I had been waiting for all night. So let's raise our glasses to my son. Thank you, Alex, for treating us all to this wonderful evening. Time stopped. The clinking of distant silverware, the soft jazz playing over the speakers, the murmur of other diners, it all faded into a dull, buzzing silence. The only thing I could see clearly were their faces. My father, Ricardo, looking smug and satisfied, as if he'd just pulled off a brilliant business deal. My mother, Isabella, nodding along her eyes, already thinking about what dessert she would order now that it was officially on my dime. And Sophia, my little sister, giving me a dazzling smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, a smile that said, "Thanks for the free meal, big brother." And in that moment, the trust I had left for them, the tiny flickering ember of hope that maybe, just maybe this time was different. It didn't just die. It was vaporized. It turned to ash and blew away on the cold wind of their entitlement. This was 8:45 p.m. This was the moment the relationship I thought I had with my family was officially severed. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger was still there, a white-hot coal in my chest, but it was banked, now contained. My mind was crystal clear, the path forward illuminated as if by a bolt of lightning. The play was over. Their part was done. Now it was my turn, my scene. I picked up my own glass of water, a small, deliberate movement. I raised it, my hand perfectly steady. I smiled. It was the best performance of my life. It was a genuine smile, but it wasn't for them. It was for me. It was the smile of a man who had just been set free. Thank you, I said, my voice even and pleasant. That means a lot. It's been a lovely evening. They all beamed, basking in the glow of their success. They thought my smile was for them. They thought my words meant I accepted the charge, that I was happy to be their walking, talking ATM. The relief on their faces was palpable. The trap had been sprung, and the prey had gracefully accepted its fate. I took a slow sip of water, placing the glass back down on the white linen tablecloth with a soft click. I let the moment sit there for a beat, savoring the depth of their ignorance. I looked from my father's smug face to my mother's primped satisfaction to my sister's greedy excitement. I memorized it. This was the last time I would ever see them like this. This was the last time I would ever sit at a table with them under these terms. I pushed my chair back slightly. Wow, that wine went right through me, I said, feigning a slight chuckle. If you'll excuse me for a moment, I need to use the restroom. It was the perfect excuse. Mundane, unquestionable. My mother just waved a dismissive hand, already looking at the dessert menu the waiter had left. Of course, dear. Take your time. We'll try to decide between the creme brulee and the chocolate lava cake. Don't be too long, son, my father added, winking at me. We haven't even gotten to the best part of the meal yet. Oh, you have no idea, I thought. You have absolutely no idea. I stood up, smoothed down my shirt, and gave them one last polite nod. I'll be right back, I lied. And with that, at 8:46 p.m., I turned and walked away from the table. I didn't walk towards the polished mahogany sign that said restrooms. I walked past it, my pace steady and unhurried. My eyes scanned the restaurant, and I saw it. A smaller, less conspicuous door near the coat check, marked with a simple, elegant sign, exit. It was a side entrance, probably for staff or for patrons wanting to slip out to the valet without walking through the main dining room. It was my escape hatch. Every step was deliberate. Every breath was controlled. I wasn't running, I was executing a plan that had been forming in the back of my mind for years, a plan that had finally crystallized in the last 60 seconds. I reached the door, my hand closing around the cool brass handle. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what I would see: three people, my family, laughing and debating desserts, completely oblivious. They were secure in their belief that they had me, that I would always fold, that I would always pay. They were about to learn in the most public and humiliating way possible that the Bank of Alexander Cruz was now permanently closed. I pushed the door open and stepped out into the cool night air. The gentle clinking of cutlery and the murmur of conversation from the restaurant faded behind me, replaced by the distant sound of city traffic. I didn't hesitate. I didn't look back. I walked calmly down a short landscape path that led to the parking lot. The valet, a young kid in a sharp red jacket, saw me approaching and gave me a questioning look. I held up my keys. Just grabbing something from my car, I said, my voice steady. He nodded and went back to checking his phone. My car was parked 3 rows back. Each step on the dark asphalt was a drumbeat marking the end of an era. The era of being the reliable son, the fallback plan, the emergency fund. The era of my love and loyalty being mistaken for a line of credit. I reached my car, the familiar weight of the key fob in my hand. I unlocked it, but I didn't get in. Not yet. There was one final crucial step. At exactly 8:47 p.m., I pulled my iPhone 14 from my pocket. The screen glowed to life, showing my neutral, professional wallpaper. For a moment, I saw it for what it was, a leash. A direct line for the guilt trips, the frantic demands, the feigned apologies that would inevitably follow. I could already hear my mother's voice dripping with manufactured panic and theatrical tears. I could hear my father's booming, indignant rage. I could hear my sister's whining about how I had embarrassed her. I held down the power button and the volume key. The little slider appeared on the screen. Slide to power off. With a decisive swipe of my thumb, I slid it. The screen went black. The leash was cut. The connection was severed. I had just made myself a ghost. Only then did I get into the driver's seat. I started the engine, the quiet hum of the machine a comforting sound in the sudden profound silence of my life. I pulled out of the parking space, drove past the valet stand, without a second glance, and merged into traffic. I was driving away from Le Ciel Étoile, away from a $700 meal I never agreed to pay for, and away from the 3 people who were supposed to be my family. I don't need to be there to know what happened next. I can picture it as clearly as if I were watching a movie. Back at the table, a few minutes have passed. My mother, Isabella, has probably finished her detailed analysis of the dessert menu. She looks at my empty chair, a flicker of impatience on her face. What is taking him so long, she'd murmur to my father. Sophia, my sister, would be scrolling through her phone, completely disinterested, until the moment a credit card was needed. Another 5 minutes crawl by. The waiter, ever attentive, might approach. Would you care for dessert menus or perhaps some coffee? We're just waiting for our son to return. My father, Ricardo, would say, a touch of annoyance in his voice. This is the point where the first real seed of doubt would be planted. My mother, a creature of control, would decide to take action. She'd pull out her phone. I'm just going to give him a call, she'd announce, dialing my number with practiced ease. She'd press the phone to her ear, expecting it to ring. But it wouldn't. It would go straight to voicemail. Her brow would furrow. That's odd. Alex's phone is never off. She'd try again. Same result. A cold knot of unease would begin to form in her stomach. That's strange, she'd say, her voice a little tight. It's going right to voicemail. My father would scoff. The battery probably died. He's irresponsible with that thing. But he'd be looking toward the restrooms a little more intently now. Sophia would finally look up from her phone, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. And then the moment of truth would arrive, carried on a small black leather tray. The waiter would approach the table with a polite, professional smile. I can bring this whenever you're ready, he'd say, placing the bill holder gently in the center of the table. For a few seconds, no one would touch it. It would sit there like a little black coffin. Finally, my father, with his typical patriarchal bluster, would reach for it. He'd pick it up, expecting me to walk back any second to take it from him. He'd flip it open, and he would see the number. $785.50. I can just imagine the sequence of emotions that would flash across his face. First, a flicker of satisfaction, thinking of the generous son who was covering this extravagant meal. Then, as he looks up and sees my chair is still empty, and my mother is staring at her phone with a worried expression, the satisfaction would curdle into confusion. And then the confusion would give way to a dawning, horrifying realization. He's not in the restroom. He didn't forget to charge his phone. He's gone. The silence at the table would be deafening. Isabella, Ricardo, and Sophia would just stare at each other, the truth hanging in the air between them, more expensive and bitter than the 2 bottles of wine they'd so happily consumed. The waiter, seeing their stunned faces, would offer a patient smile. Is everything all right? My mother, her face pale with humiliation, would be the one he looks to. because my mother, in her infinite wisdom and arrogance, was the one who made the reservation. The table at Le Ciel Étoile was booked under one name, Isabella Cruz. The liability was hers. The problem was hers. The bill was hers. The quiet festive dinner would instantly devolve into a nightmare of their own making. I can hear the whispered, frantic arguments. "What do we do?" Isabella would hiss at my father, her voice trembling with fury and shame. "What do you mean, what do we do?" "We pay for it," Ricardo would snap back, his face turning a blotchy red. "How could you let him just walk out? How could I let him? You're the one who made that pompous toast. You laid it on so thick he probably choked on it." Sophia would start to panic. "I can't believe he did this. This is so embarrassing. Everyone is looking at us. My card is going to be maxed out." They would have to pool their resources. My father pulling out his wallet with a grimace. My mother digging through her purse, her hands shaking. My sister reluctantly offering up her credit card, probably calculating how many brunches and shopping trips this little disaster was going to cost her. They would have to face the humiliation of splitting a nearly $800 bill they never intended to pay, all under the polite, watchful eye of the restaurant staff. The celebration was over. The trap they had set for me had snapped shut on them instead. They would leave that restaurant not as a happy family celebrating my success, but as three co-conspirators in a failed heist, bickering and blaming each other all the way to the car. The trust between them, already thin, would be shredded. The beautiful evening they had planned at my expense had been ruined, but the real damage was to their own relationships. They had shown each other exactly who they were. And me. At 9:05 p.m., I was on the freeway, the city lights a blur outside my window. I wasn't happy. I wasn't celebrating. I felt hollow. But I also felt a grim, steely resolve. The anger had cooled into something solid and permanent. A boundary. For years, I had let them chip away at my boundaries, taking a little here, demanding a little there, until I was just an extension of their needs. Tonight, I didn't just build a wall. I built a fortress. I had broken the pattern. I understood the price of this victory. I had lost my family. But as I drove, I replayed the evening in my head, and I had to ask myself, what had I really lost? A mother who saw my bonus as her opportunity. A father who saw my generosity as an obligation. A sister who saw me as a convenience. That wasn't a family. It was a board of directors, and I had just tendered my resignation. I finally pulled into the garage of my own apartment building. I walked into my quiet, clean apartment, a space I had earned, a sanctuary I had built. I tossed my keys into the bowl by the door. I took off my jacket. I walked over to the kitchen counter and looked at the black, silent rectangle of my iPhone 14. No frantic missed calls. No barrage of angry, manipulative texts. No voicemails full of fake tears or red-faced rage. Just silence. It was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my own life finally truly beginning.